The Galactic Hall stretched like a cathedral of crystal and steel, its transparent dome revealing the swirling nebulae of the Andromeda sector. 100 alien species filled the amphitheater, some breathing methane through crystalline masks, others floating in anti-gravity fields, their bioluminescent tentacles pulsing with nervous energy. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime, converting 1,000 different languages into something resembling unity. At the center of it all, Colonel Marcus Chen of the Earth Marine Corps walked toward the podium with measured steps. His dress uniform bore the scars of a dozen conflicts, burn marks from plasma fire, a torn sleeve hastily mended, medals that had been bent and hammered back into shape. The cybernetic implant over his left eye glowed a steady blue, scanning the crowd with military precision. "Humans," whispered the Zephyrian delegate, her voice like wind through crystal caves. "Always so, ... The Korthak ambassador's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Rigid, they're barbarians. Did you see the footage from the Tau Ceti incident? They charged a plasma cannon nest. On foot." Chun's enhanced hearing caught every word. He'd heard it all before, the whispers, the fear, the barely concealed contempt. Earth was the new kid on the galactic block, and nobody quite knew what to make of humanity's peculiar brand of controlled chaos. The Marine cleared his throat, and the hall fell silent. Even the atmospheric processors seemed to hold their breath. "Honored delegates," Chen began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space, without amplification. "I come before you not as a conqueror, but as a representative of a species that has learned something about survival." In the third tier of seats, partially hidden behind a cluster of gaseous Etherians, something moved in the shadows. A figure in a hooded cloak adjusted something metallic in their gripper vegan plasma pistol, its energy cell glowing ominously. "We know what it means to claw our way up from nothing," Chen continued, "to face extinction and choose to fight another day. We've seen the darkness between stars, and we've made our peace with it." The hooded figure raised the weapon. "But we also know something about hope." The shot rang out like thunder in the cathedral silence. Time fractured. The plasma bolt struck Chun's left shoulder, spinning him half around. His uniform erupted in flame and smoke. The smell of burned flesh and fabric filled the air. Delegates screamed in a dozen different octaves. The crystalline chorus shattered into discordant notes of panic. Chun staggered, his cybernetic eye flickering. His trauma sensors flooded his system with combat stimulants. Blood ran down his arm, pooling on the pristine floor. The translator devices struggled to keep up with the chaotic cacophony of terror in 100 alien tongues. The Marine straightened slowly, his remaining hand pressed to the wound. Steam rose from his fingers as emergency medical nanites began their work. When he looked up, his eyes held the cold fire of a man who had walked through hell and kept his appointment on the other side. "As I was saying," Chung continued, his voice never wavering, "we also know something about hope." The hall fell silent again, but this time it was the silence of the grave. Even the atmospheric processors seemed to have stopped breathing. Chun's enhanced eye swept the crowd with predatory focus, analyzing movement patterns, heat signatures, stress, pheromones. Their third tier, behind a figure in a dark cloak, still holding the smoking weapon, frozen in disbelief. "You expected me to fall," Chun said, his voice carrying a new edge. "You expected me to break, to run, to beg." The shooter began to move, trying to blend into the crowd, but Chun was already in motion. He vaulted over the podium's railing, landing hard on the amphitheater floor. His shoulders screamed in protest, but his legs carried him forward with the inexorable momentum of a landslide. Security drones buzzed overhead, but their protocols were crashing. How do you arrest a victim who's chasing his attacker? Alien guards reached for their weapons, but Chun's reputation preceded him. This was the human who had held the line at Proxima Base for 72 hours straight, the one who had walked into a Korthok pain amplifier and emerged with their surrender. The shooter was running now, pushing through the crowd with desperate abandon. Chun followed with the patient relentlessness of a bloodhound, his tactical training taking over. He read the crowd's flow, anticipated the turns, cut off escape routes with surgical precision. A memory flashed through his mind, a drill instructor's voice, echoing through the rain-soaked training grounds of Paris Island. "Pain is weakness leaving the body. Marines, fear is just evolution's way of keeping the weak alive. You are not weak. You are not afraid. You are inevitable." The shooter stumbled, caught between a group of towering Titan-class delegates and a cluster of aquatic Neptunians in their mobility tanks. Chen closed the distance in 3 long strides, his good arm shooting out to grab the assassin's cloak. The fabric tore away, revealing a vegan humanoid but pale as moonlight, with large black eyes that now held nothing but terror. The plasma pistol clattered to the floor. "Please," the vegan whispered in accented standard. "I was only following orders." The Coalition said humans were a threat to galactic peace. Chen's grip tightened on the alien's collar. The word came out like a curse. He shot an unarmed diplomat during a peace summit. What part of that seemed peaceful to you? The crowd parted before them like water before a shark's fin. Delegates who had been calling for human blood just moments before now watched in stunned silence as the bleeding Marine dragged his would-be assassin back toward the podium. A Korthak security chief stepped forward, mandibles clicking rapidly. "Human, release the prisoner immediately. You have no authority here." Chen's cybernetic eye fixed on the alien with laser intensity. "Sit down." The Korth sat. Chen hauled his captive up the steps to the podium, leaving a trail of blood on the pristine floor. The wound had begun to clot, but his shoulder still throbbed with each heartbeat. He shoved the vegan to his knees at the base of the speaking platform and turned to face the assembled delegates. "Let this be your answer," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "You want to know what humans are? You want to understand why we've gone from bronze tools to star travel in 10,000 years? This is why." He gestured to the kneeling assassin, then to his own wounded shoulder. "We came here in peace. We offered you our friendship, our technology, our protection. You responded with fear, with suspicion, with bullets." The hall's main display screens flickered to life, showing scenes from Earth's history, the trenches of the Somme, the beaches of Normandy, the long march to equality, the first tentative steps into space. Images of humans at their worst and their best, failing and rising, bleeding and healing. "You think we're barbarians because we know how to fight?" Chen continued. "You think we're dangerous because we've seen the dark and refuse to let it consume us. But you're wrong about what makes us dangerous." His eyes swept the crowd, meeting the gaze of every delegate who dared to look at him. "We're dangerous because we don't give up, because we don't break, because when you shoot us mid-speech, we finish the speech anyway." In the front row, the Etheria Council leader's gaseous form shimmered with what might have been emotion. Behind her, the Titan delegate's stone-like features had softened into something approaching respect. "You fear us," Chen said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "because you don't understand us. You've never had to claw your way up from nothing. You've never had to look extinction in the eye and choose to fight one more day. You've never had to learn that the only way to survive is to be harder than whatever's trying to kill you." The vegan assassin looked up at him with tears streaming down his pale cheeks. I didn't know. The Coalition said you were a monster, that you would consume the galaxy if given the chance." Chen's expression softened slightly. "The only thing we're going to consume is ignorance, fear, the idea that different means dangerous." He looked back at the crowd. "We're not perfect. We've made mistakes, terrible ones. But we've learned from them. We've grown. We've become something more than our worst impulses." He opened his uniform jacket, revealing the emergency medical patch that had sealed his wound. Underneath, his chest rose and fell with steady breaths. "You can't kill a voice born from fire. You can't silence a species that learned to sing in the dark. You can't break people who've already been broken and put themselves back together." One by one, delegates began to stand. First, the Ethereal Council leader, her form pulsing with newfound respect. Then the Titan, his massive frame rising like a mountain. The crystalline chorus began to sing a low, harmonious note that resonated through the hall like a prayer. The Zephyrian delegate who had whispered about human rigidity was the first to approach the podium. She moved with the fluid grace of her kind, but her crystalline eyes held something new understanding. "Colonel Chun," she said, her voice like wind through crystal caves, "we misjudged your species. This attack was orchestrated by a faction that fears change, that fears growth. But you have shown us what true strength looks like." She knelt before him, her crystalline form refracting the hall's light into rainbow patterns. "The Zephyrian Collective formally requests to learn from humanity, to understand what makes you ... you." The gesture rippled through the crowd like a stone dropped in still water. The Titan delegate's footsteps shook the floor as he approached, his massive form casting a shadow over the podium. The stone speakers have seen empires rise and fall for 10,000 years, he rumbled, his voice like grinding granite. But we have never seen a species that could turn its own pain into strength. We too would learn from you. Chen looked down at the vegan assassin, who had stopped crying and was staring up at him with something like awe. What's your name? Kellen, the alien whispered. Kellen Vex. I'm a communications specialist with the Vegan Defense Force. The Coalition convinced us that humans were a threat to galactic stability. The Coalition was wrong, Chen said gently. But that doesn't make you a monster. It makes you a victim of the same fear that almost destroyed my species a dozen times over. He extended his good hand. Stand up, Kellen. Nobody kneels in the presence of humans. We've had enough of that. The vegan rose shakily, accepting the offered hand. I shot you. I tried to kill you. Why are you helping me? Chen's smile was warm despite the pain in his shoulder. Because that's what humans do. We don't just survive, we help others survive too. That's what makes us strong. The hall erupted in a sound that no translator could quite capture, a mixture of approval, amazement, and something that might have been hope. The crystalline chorus swelled, their song becoming a symphony of unity. The Galactic News Network would call it the miracle of Andromeda Hall. The footage would play on every civilized world in the galaxy, the human marine taking a plasma bolt to the shoulder and continuing his speech, the methodical hunt through the crowd, the moment when fear transformed into respect. But Chun barely noticed the media frenzy. He was too busy helping Kellen Vex work through the conditioning that had turned him into an assassin. The vegan had been fed a steady diet of propaganda about human aggression, about the coming war that would consume the galaxy. It took 3 days of patient conversation to undo years of indoctrination. The Coalition used my fear, Kellen said on the 3rd day, as they sat in the medical bay of the human delegation's ship. They told me that humans were incapable of mercy, that you saw other species as obstacles to be removed. Chun's shoulder was healing nicely, the nanites having done their work. Fear's a powerful tool, he said. My species knows that better than most. We've used it against each other for millennia, but we've also learned that fear is just another problem to be solved. Through the viewport, they could see the Galactic Hall where delegates from 100 worlds were working on the Human Integration Accords. The document would formally welcome Earth into the galactic community, but more importantly, it would establish humanity as a mediating force in interstellar conflicts. You know what the strangest part is? Kellen asked. I expected you to be angry, to want revenge, but you've been nothing but kind. Chun considered this. Anger's useful in combat. It keeps you alive when everything else fails. But after the shooting stops, you have to put it away. Otherwise, it becomes its own kind of prison. The door chimed, and Admiral Sarah Hayes entered. Chun's commanding officer was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, but her smile was genuine. Colonel, we've got news from the vegan homeworld. Their parliament has voted to expel the Coalition representatives and formally apologize for the assassination attempt. They're also requesting a human military advisor to help them restructure their defense forces. Chun looked at Kellen, who nodded slowly. I've recommended Specialist Vex for the position. He knows their culture, their fears, their potential. With the right guidance, he could help them build something better, a human and a vegan, working together. Hayes mused. The galaxy's going to be a very different place in a few years. Through the viewport, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, but somehow they seemed brighter than before. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities, and humanity, as always, was ready to face whatever came next. 6 months later, the story had become legend. Children on a dozen worlds played games where they pretended to be the Marine who wouldn't fall. Diplomatic academies use footage of the speech as a textbook example of grace under pressure. The Galactic Peace Corps has adopted strength through unity as their motto, directly inspired by Chan's words. But in a small cafe on Lunasit, Marcus Chen sat with a cup of coffee and a datapad, reading reports from the frontier worlds. He'd retired from active duty after Andromeda Hall, but his work was far from over. The Human Integration Initiative needed experienced officers to help establish diplomatic and military protocols with new alien species. The cafe's holoscreen was playing the news, and the border skirmish resolved through negotiation rather than violence. Another species choosing cooperation over conquest. The galaxy was learning, slowly but surely, that strength didn't have to mean destruction. Excuse me, a voice said behind him. Chun turned to see a young human woman in a fresh lieutenant's uniform. "Are you Colonel Chun? The one from the Galactic Hall?" Chun smiled. "I'm a colonel. Yes. What can I do for you, Lieutenant? I'm shipping out to the Vega system tomorrow. My first diplomatic mission. I was wondering, how do you find the courage to keep going when everything seems impossible?" Chun studied her face. Young, determined, a little afraid, but trying not to show it. Himself, 30 years ago. "You don't find courage, Lieutenant. You build it. One choice at a time. One moment at a time. One speech at a time, even when someone's shooting at you." He stood, leaving a tip for the server. "And remember, we're not just representing humanity out there. We're representing the idea that different doesn't mean dangerous. That strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down." As he walked away, Chun could hear the young lieutenant's voice calling after him. "Sir, what if I fail?" He paused in the doorway, looking back with a smile that had faced down assassins and ambassadors alike. "Then you get up and try again. That's what humans do. That's what makes us human." The stars waited beyond the viewport, vast and full of promise. Somewhere out there, 100 species were learning to work together to build something better than the sum of their parts. And humanity, bloody, stubborn, indomitable humanity, was helping to show them the way. The Marine who wouldn't fall had become more than a man. He had become a symbol, a promise, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from defeating your enemies, but from helping them become your friends. In the end, that might be the most human thing of all. They shot the Earth Marine mid-speech. He kept talking and dragged the shooter to the podium. "The galaxy has never been the same.